Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. This will be my 10th or so review involving this brewery. They're one of the oldest and most established craft breweries here in Sweden, and they're known mainly for their kind of traditional English and German styles of beer, and it's always nice to see what they're releasing. The one that we're going to have a look at today is one of my favourite styles of beer. It's where my whole journey with craft beer began, in fact, so very curious to see how they interpret this one, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up toward the Stockholm area. We're going to go to the south of the city to a little place called Nynäshamn, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri. So this particular beer is called the Rassaviken Rököl. It comes in at 5.1% ABV, and this one is a smoke beer or rauch beer, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget, and that was sometime in the middle of June actually. This beer has been in my fridge for a couple of weeks. I've been meaning to get around to this one, but certainly very curious to see how it turns out. Of course, these beers are lager beers, of course, the rauch beers. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. Always nice to return to Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri as well. The last beer that we had from these guys, if memory serves me correctly, was the Landsort Lager, which was very nice. So I need to check out their pills next time, I think. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. As I've told you before, my whole love of craft beer began with the likes of, you know, the Schlenkerlas, the Spezials, and the other rauch beers in the Bamberg area. So hopefully this one is a nice interpretation of it. Let's get cracking then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Nynäshamn, which is to the south of Stockholm, and this company was founded back in 1997, which makes it the oldest of the new generation of Swedish craft breweries. These days, of course, there are somewhere in the region of 800 little microbreweries in the country. But this brewery finds its origins in the Hagersbergsklubb, which was an organisation started by some friends who liked to go on expeditions around Europe to visit different breweries, and the main reason that they were doing this was that Sweden was very lacking in terms of choice of beer for a very long time. But in 1993, the club decided that they needed a permanent venue, and so they took an old warehouse and converted it into a pub and breakfast bar, and this proved to be very popular with the locals. So the guys also began to brew some of their own beer after taking a home brewing course in Stockholm in 1994. But apparently in the early 1990s, there had been a small brewery in the town that used the name Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri. So when they started up their own activities, they decided that they were going to use this name again, and they name all of their beers after local places on the archipelago, because they want to keep this image of being a local brewery. But they had a small brewery that they largely built themselves initially, and in the spring of 1997 they launched their first and now flagship beer, which is the Bideru Bitter, and this was launched at the Harbour Party in Nynäshamn. So a visit from Michael Jackson, also known as the Beer Hunter, in 2000 inspired the brewery, and they continued to brew despite the long hours and hard work. At this point, nearly everything was done by hand, including the bottling and the labelling and things like this, but they were rewarded in 2002 with medals at the Stockholm Beer Festival and a permanent slot in the Systembolaget range. But in 2006, the brewery moved into their current premises, and they put a lot of time and money and things into renovating this place, and they also finally managed to secure an automated bottling line a few years later in 2009, meaning that the super long working hours could finally stop. But in 2019, Having grown, having continued to grow over the last few years. In 2019, they brewed around 900,000 litres of beer per year over the course of that year. And as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 120 different kinds of beer. They do lots of different styles. As I said, these guys produce mainly, English and German styles of beer. So yeah, there's quite a few other beers that I still need to try, of course, but I think this is review number 9 or 10 that we're doing from them here on the channel. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri for the moment. Like I said, these guys are one of the oldest craft breweries here in Sweden, and if you do get the chance, you need to try the Bedéru Bitter, Sweden's first craft beer. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about these guys. If you do enjoy their beers, I also recommend that you check out Nynäshamns Brewery. They're a brewery that came along a little bit later on and do similar kinds of things. So yeah, if you're into your German traditional and English traditional beers, Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri and Nynäshamns Brewery are the two that you probably want to check out here in Sweden. But yeah, if you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this one. So as you can see, the bottle is sweating a little bit because it's very hot here in Sweden over the summer. But yeah, artwork on this one is quite similar to what we've seen from these guys before. Very, very nice and very, very local. Tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here, and there you can see the Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri symbol. That is also on the bottle cap, incidentally. But this beer takes its name Rassaviken. Rassaviken is a bay in a national park, a nature reserve basically, which is kind of to the south of Nynäshamn. But it tells you on the side here, Rassaviken smoke beer has taken its name from the Huidavik, I guess that's the nature reserve that lies to the southwest part of our archipelago. There one can go for the first dip, as in a swim, or to just have a calm and have a calm, safe evening. I guess you could say Sekja Netham. Yeah, just stay there for the evening, a camp basically. But yeah, this beer is decoction mashed lager beer in the South German style with beech smoked malt from Bamberg and hops from Hallertau. This beer gives you a taste of roastiness, a full body, and a medium after business, just as the beers do, just as the beers in Bamberg give you. As with all of our beers, this one is unpasteurized and brewed with care, with love and care, basically. Yeah, getting faster at these, getting faster at doing these direct translations from Swedish. Brain is working, yeah. But I have my gymnasium level Swedish now, which is great. So yeah, always good to test your brain like that. But as you can see, half-litre bottle. I think this one was either 25 or 30 Swedish kroner, and I'm tempted to say it might have even been 28 or something. Let's say 30. So this was like 30 Swedish kroner. That translates to roughly €3, somewhere in the region of like £2.75 sterling, something like that. And I guess maybe $3. What would it be? $3.25, $3.50 American, just to give those of you a price range from across the world. But yeah, a Rauch beer from Sweden's oldest craft brewery. I like that. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. As I said, this one comes in at 5.1% ABV, Bamberg Rauch malts, and some Hallertau hops. So yeah, this should be quite nice. Just come to think of it, just as soon as I've started pouring this thing, I just thought I could have got my tankard out for this one, but what can you do? The beer's already in the glass. There we go. So, yeah, I like the tulip glasses, of course, because they are the best all-rounders for lots of different styles. So, yeah. Right then, well, this beer, you can see it's poured a nice kind of coppery colour, like a light amber type, kind of copper colour, this one. You can see the head has poured out as being, just under a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy coloured head. That's faded away to just be a very kind of thin foamy layer, and it is fading even faster than that, but there is a nice kind of rich ring around the edge of the glass there, and as soon as you go above that, you're going to smell that beautiful beech smoked malt in there. It's absolutely lovely. So yeah, this one definitely looks like a lovely kind of rich amber colour. It's not a million miles away in terms of colour from a Märzen, of course. Remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. I think a lager beer like this is probably going to undergo like a, sort of 60 to 90 minute boil, something like that. But the malts that you use, they determine the magnitude of the colour. Then you've also got some barrel aging and adjuncts and things can also help determine the colour of your beer there. A bit of a brain fart in that, but yeah, in terms of the copper, in terms of this kind of coppery light amber colour that this beer has, this one, this is definitely not out with the realms of possibility for this style, and it's got a little bit of a kind of natural, it's got a wee bit of a natural haze to it, but this beer is quite clear. This colour, of course, is what you would expect from the likes of the, kind of like more like the Spezial, actually. This beer looks a little bit more like the Spezial Lagerrauch beer than the Schlenkerla one. The Schlenkerla one is a little bit darker than this, from what I remember, but it was the Schlenkerla beer that got me into craft beer in the first place. Quite an unusual route into beer, of course, but in terms of appearance, nothing particularly surprising about this one when you consider what style it is. And as I say, if you're really into your Rauch beers as I am, this one seems a little bit more like the Spezial in terms of its appearance. So yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. That is a beautiful, beautiful beer. Yeah. The aroma of this one is absolutely lovely. Yeah, I think this one goes together just really, really nicely. It's very nostalgic for me, this beer. I would say that it's just a very, very nostalgic beer for me. So, I mean, this one, it really just reminds me of Spezial right away. The thing that you're going to notice about these Bamberg Rauch malts, they're just lovely. I mean, they smell like, you can obviously smell a little bit of the beech wood in this one. You can smell that in the base of the beer, but it gives you this big kind of meaty, porky kind of note. A lot of people say it smells like barbecue, but I think it's a little bit too sweet to be barbecue, to be honest with you. It really comes across as more like a kind of porky meat. It's like, the Maillard reactions that you get on the edge of food when it just browns a little bit. It really smells like that. Yeah, it's that big, porky, Maillardy kind of thing that you get out of this one. It's like it's like just slightly overcooked bacon. It's just kind of like that with this beer. Of course, you do also get oak smoked Rauch malts, and the beer, if you want to try that, would be the Schlenkerla Eiche Doppelbock. Beautiful beer, but yeah, you really get quite a bit of that. You get a little bit more vanilla out of those, whereas the beech smoked Rauch malts are a little bit more kind of round, sort of woody and meaty and things like that. So yeah, this beer's got a lovely kind of smooth, woody backbone to it. Those big kind of, slightly overcooked bacon, Maillardy type reactions. It's lovely. It really comes across very, very nicely. Yeah, the aroma of this one is just it's just absolutely lovely. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up from me. It smells very, very authentic, and when it comes to these German beers, that's what I look for, is something authentic. But on top of this, of course, you do get a little bit of a kind of brown bready note. So there's definitely a wee bit of that kind of brown, wholemealy, bready sort of thing out of this one. A good little bit of bread crust as well. And I want to say there is perhaps a little touch of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing in this one. It doesn't really give you a straight up caramel, but there might be a little bit of that in there. But I think that the sheer power, if you like, that's the one thing about Rauch malts, is they're very powerful and very pungent when it comes to beer making. So you can definitely pick up quite a lot of that in this beer. That's certainly, that's for sure. But yeah, the aroma of this one is absolutely lovely. Yeah, as I say, a wee bit of a kind of brown bready note on top of it, a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, and I really like how that goes together. So yeah, the aroma out of this one, I think, goes together very, very nicely. On the malty side of things, it's very authentic. On the hoppy side of things, it's also as you would expect. You've got a nice little bit of earthiness to this one. You can smell that in the back corners of the palate, so you get a wee bit of that. You always get a little bit of smooth earthiness from these German noble hops. As you come further forward on the nose, you'll start to get that bright floral aromaticity, but there's also a wee bit of a kind of grassy quality in there as well. It's got a little bit of a citrusy, grassy type note to it, and I wouldn't say it's overly zesty, but there is a little touch of a kind of zesty note to coming out of this beer. So yeah, the aroma of this beer is absolutely lovely. So yeah, the citrusy, zesty type thing that comes off of this is just quite minimal, but it just gives the beer a nice little bit of a kind of fresh edge to it. But on the fruity side of things, then I think, you know, there's a wee bit of a kind of, you do get a little tiny hint of like a red fruit. This one would be a teeny little bit of fig or something like that, but you've also got a lovely little bit of a kind of peary, appley sort of ester in this one. So yeah, there is a wee bit of that in there. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of smooth pear, maybe a lighter apple, and also just a wee tiny hint of a kind of light red fruity character coming out of it. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. I think it works out very, very well. So yeah, the aroma of this one is very authentic, and as I say, it reminds me of the Brauerei Spezial Rauchlagerbier. I think it's called, to give it its exact name. So yeah, this one is very, very nice. Big thumbs up to Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri for this beer in terms of its authenticity. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we go on. But do take, if you haven't tried a Rauch beer before, do take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this, because this is very, very authentic, particularly when you consider the Spezial. It's maybe not quite as bready as the Schlenkerla is, but yeah, this comes across as very nice. So yeah, this one is the Rassaviken Rököl. The smoke beer, a Rauch beer, whatever you want to call it, coming in at 5.1% ABV from Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri in Nynäshamn to the south of Stockholm. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh, that is very nice. First impression is it's got the authenticity you want, but again, as you always get with these Nordic beers, it sort of just feels a little bit smoother and a little bit cleaner, if you like. And you know, German beer is always very smooth, but the Nordic water always gives you this element of cleanliness, and you do get that out of this beer. You can just sort of taste the minerals and the just cleanliness of the water, and you pick up that in this beer straight away. But other than that, it's extremely, extremely authentic. This one might well be the most authentic that I've had from Nynäshamns yet. It's beautifully balanced as well. That's the other thing that's quite critical with these Rauch beers, because if you put in too much malt, if you put in too much of that Rauch malt, you're just going to overpower the thing. Same if you put in a little bit of peated malt in some of these beers as well. They can be very, you know, they can be very, very sort of smoky and stuff like that. You know, the peat, you know, it's like Scotch whisky barrel aging compared to bourbon barrel aging. You know, the Scotch peated malts are very, very powerful as well, probably even more powerful than these German Rauch malts. But this is a lovely beer. Thumbs up to Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri for this one. So yeah, let's just put the rest of this. I think we'll be able to fit the rest of this in the glass now and finish it off. But yeah, this is a solid Rauch beer. I think I might need to get a bottle of this for Daniel, for my friend Daniel, and take it down to Germany for him, and perhaps also for my friend Peter, the clueless drinker. I think he would quite enjoy this. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one for you a little bit more then, and describe exactly what's going on here. So with this beer, straight away you get that nice, you can feel the backbone of this beer. You get that nice sort of smooth, woody beech note that just goes right across the middle of your palate there, and you can feel the sort of smoky characters just kind of sitting on top of that. You know, towards the kind of on the front half of that middle third of your palate, you can feel that the woody characters are a little bit sort of, they feel a little bit kind of stronger in a sense, and a little bit drier. You can feel that, you get that nice sort of milliardy kind of smoked bacon type quality on the kind of front half of the middle third of your tongue, but you can feel that the woodiness sort of smoothens out and almost kind of sweetens up a little bit on the back half of that middle third of your palate, which I quite like as well. So it's got two nice kind of contrasts there. You've got the slightly drier, more meaty element of it, and then you've got the smoother woody note sitting on the back of that middle third of your palate. So I like that for sure. Sitting on top of that, there's a nice kind of smooth, there's a nice sort of smooth brown bready thing just sitting on top of that. So I really like how that goes together. Yeah, on top of the kind of woody elements, there is a bit of a smooth kind of wholemealy brown bready sort of thing that just sits on top of that that woody backbone, and I think it works really, really well. But on top of the kind of bready thing, there is a wee bit of a brown sugary element to this beer as well. So there's almost like a circle that sits in the middle, in the dead centre of your palate, and you just feel a little bit of a smooth kind of, almost, it feels like quite a dry, slightly toasty caramel. You do get a little bit of that, but then in the dead centre of your palate you can feel there's quite a concentrated, oily, brown, sugary sort of thing. But as you move out from the dead centre of your palate, it's as you move out from the dead centre of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of biscuity, and you get a bit more of that kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, which is interesting. So you can feel the sort of grainier brown sugary sweetness sitting towards the edge of the middle third of your palate there, which I really like. So yeah. Yeah. And I think the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, it's almost like the smoky character just kind of mellows out a little bit and kind of sits there, and so you get a bit of the meatiness, but I think the woodiness sort of smoothens out everything else as you go further into the aftertaste too. But yeah, it's a lovely Rauch beer, this one. I really like this. It's quite, it's not as I say, it's not quite as crisp, if you like, and it's a little bit smoother, I think, than the likes of the Spezial, but it's not quite as almost bready and thick as the Schlenkerla might be. It's kind of its own thing, but it has the right flavour profile, if that makes sense. So it kind of does its own thing, this one. It's like a very kind of clean version of a very kind of clean and sort of oily and smooth version of what we had before. But we'll come back to the mouthfeel a little bit later on. But yeah, we've covered the middle third of your palate, and that is the most complex part of the beer, of course. But yeah, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. There's one or two little more kind of grainy things coming out of this one, which I do like. I do enjoy that. But then the base of that back third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of, some of the kind of drier woody elements creep through in there, and a little bit of the smoky character too. But on top of that, you get a slightly thicker bready element coming out of this beer. It comes across as a little bit more like a kind of sweet German rye bread. I always miss the bakeries. That's one thing I really miss about living in Germany. I loved it there. But yeah, you can feel that slightly thicker bready note in the back third of your palate, and then on top of that, you've got the more airy, yeasty characters coming out of it as well. So I really like that about this beer, that's for sure. So yeah, you can feel that more airy kind of yeasty element coming out of the beer. So yeah, it's almost like when you start at the back of your palate, the flavour's a little bit taller, so as you come further forward, you can feel it kind of just condensing down a little bit. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it just squashes down a wee bit more, and then it feels kind of quite condensed there. So the flavour starts off tall at the back, condenses down, and then the middle third of your palate is quite compact. So I think that describes the malty, yeasty side of this beer quite well. Let's look at the hops then. So in the back corners of your palate, you can feel a nice little bit of earthiness there. It's a smooth earthiness, as you would expect of these German noble hops. But as you move further forward from that, it does have a wee tiny bit of a herbal quality, and then as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a nice kind of brighter floral aromaticity to it, and I can really appreciate how that goes together. Round the front curve of the palate though, it's a bit lighter. It's a little bit lighter and more kind of grassy and citrusy. So yeah, I like how that goes together as well. There is a wee bit of a slight zest to the front kind of tip of your tongue, but again, it's not too much. The whole hoppy side of this beer comes across as quite smooth, and that's something that you expect of German noble hops, to be quite honest. Yeah, so yeah, again, that's the hoppy character of the beer, described quite succinctly, I would say. So yeah, on the front third of your palate then, let's have a little look at that. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you can feel a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there, a wee bit of a kind of grainy bread crusty thing, but also a wee bit of the smoky character comes out on the front. That border region there, but then the base of the front third of your palate is a kind of smooth, bready sort of thing, and a wee bit of a kind of smoky character coming out of it as well. But on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to roll their way out of the beer, and I really do like how that goes together in this one as well. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, that works absolutely. But the fruity side of the beer, let's examine that a little bit then. So when you first take the beer in, I feel that there's a little bit of a kind of red fruity kind of note out of this one. I want to say it's almost a little bit like a kind of sultana type note, but there's almost a wee kind of touch of figs to it or something like that. So yeah, the back half of that front third of your palate, it almost has just a wee bit of a sultana type note to it. When I say sultanas, I mean like, you know, dried white green grapes. There's a little bit of that there, but there's just a wee bit of a juicy fig coming out of it as you move further forward. But as you move into that front half of the front third of your tongue, it's definitely more kind of peary and things. It's got a kind of smooth kind of peary note to it, and you start to get the grass, maybe a wee tiny little bit of like a gooseberry type note as well underneath. So the fruity side of these beers, the fruity side of the Rauch beers can vary quite a bit, but I think for me, wee tiny sultana element, wee little bit of pear, and then a wee tiny hint of gooseberry underneath. The fruity side of these beers, though, as I say, takes a back seat to the malty side of things. And you get just a little touch of a figgy quality coming out of this one. You always get just a wee tiny hint of a red malt, a red fruity kind of thing with these beers, which is always kind of strange when you think about it. But yeah, it works really nicely in this beer. But this, as I say, gets a thumbs up from me. This is a very, very nice example of a Rauch beer. A little bit closer to the Spezial than it is to the Schlenkerla, but it has a really lovely oily character to it, that's for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, lovely beer, this one. Let's look at the mouthfeel then to round off the review. I don't think we need to say any more about the flavour of this one. So yeah, I describe this beer as being at the bottom end and mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. Because it comes across, it's got a slight oiliness to it, which I really quite like, but that helps promote the fact that it's a Nordic beer, and it gives you this really, really kind of clean vibe to the beer actually, which I think works very, very well. But as you go into the middle, as I say, when you go into the malty side of this beer and the bitterness and things like that, it feels very, very smooth. So that's the main thing about this beer. It feels very clean and very wet, like a Nordic beer would, because of the quality of the water here. The malty side of this beer and things, it's got a bit of dryness underneath, but it's very, very smooth, and it almost has a little touch of sweetness sitting on top of that. In terms of bitterness, I think you're talking, you know, about 20 IBUs with this beer, but quite a lot of the German lager beers are lower in terms of IBUs. So I think 20 is a fairly reasonable rough estimate for this one. Remember though, IBUs are my weakest point when it comes to beer reviewing, so always take my IBU counts with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But yeah, I think this one does work very, very well in that sense. It's just got a nice little bit of bitterness there, and that matches the dryness that comes out from the beer the further you go into the aftertaste. Little touch of a slightly oily, fruity kind of thing. But yeah, I think it works really, really nicely, this one. Lovely beer, beautifully executed, and this is a style that I'm hard to impress with, and I think it's fair to say that Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri have impressed me with this one. So well done to them, well done to them. I enjoyed this. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. A bit longer, because I always get excited about these Rauch beers and things when I come across them. But yeah, this is a very, very good one, and very authentic actually. So yeah, I guess we can leave it at that for this review. So yeah, this one was the Rassaviken Rököl, a 5.1% Rauch beer from Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri. in Nynäshamn, just to the south of Stockholm here in Sweden. Lovely beer this, and I would recommend you try it if you get the chance. But yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this one in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Nynäshamns Ångbryggeri. We will return to these guys at some point soon, I'm sure. But in the meantime, have a go at this one, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Sláinte, skull, cheers, and I'll see you guys later.